Welcome back to another Boxscore Geek show. Brian, we were off last week because of spring break, and the universe said, "You have been regular. This is unacceptable." And threw a curveball, a wrecking ball into our world. I am making a reference to a movie, Stranger Than Fiction, where Will Ferrell attempts to not do anything and literally gets a wrecking ball thrown at him. I feel that is what has happened here, Brian. Welcome to the Box Score Geek Show. I'm your host, Ray Alvarez, found most places as Nerd Numbers. With me, as always, is my producer, co-host, voice of God, and deliverer of bizarre news, Brian Foster. We are recording this on April 8th, 2025, where the Denver Nuggets have fired not just their head coach, Mike Malone, but also their general manager, Calvin Booth.
Yeah, they have. And this was so shocking to me because I don't follow the Nuggets on a day-to-day basis. I just watch their games and that's it. And apparently this has been going on for a long time, all season, if not longer. Malone and Booth were not on speaking terms. They were openly trying to sabotage each other and even sabotaging players that they thought the other person liked. Just really awful, petty stuff. And I feel bad for the Nuggets fans, but at the same time, they all seem happy. They seem like they didn't like either of these guys, and they already kind of knew about this stuff happening. The timing is the weird part, though, and we're going to talk about that more in a little bit.
Yeah, so the full rundown we've got, let's start with an appetizer. We're just going to briefly revisit the playoff race, how it shapes up, and kind of wrap up actually one of my discussions, which was MVP. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has it as a lock, and that does very much relate to the playoff race. We're going to talk coach firings. We're going to spend a meat of that on the Denver Nuggets, of course, but of course, Taylor Jenkins out in Memphis got fired as well, which is also confusing. And then, Brian, we're going to wrap it up with something super duper topical, the 2022 movie starring Adam Sandler and Juancho Hernangomez, Hustle. Watched it randomly, loved it. Wasn't following the news on if the Denver Nuggets were going to fire their coach in my free time. Was watching Hustle. Probably a better use of a Denver Nuggets fan's time. But Brian, let's just do a brief check-in on the playoffs. The playoffs really weirdly got wild. Now, this is going to be dated the second the show comes out. It's entirely possible some of the speculation is going to be done. It's very much like March Madness, right? Where you're like, oh, if this happens and this happens in the first round, I could be in the top 1% of my brackets. And then 2 games later, you're done. But ostensibly, right now, Brian, if the Thunder can beat the Lakers and the Warriors can hold on and keep winning, and we wind up, it is entirely possible at the moment out west to wind up with a 5-way tie for third place. Now, it's important for this to matter. That 5-way tie has to have the Golden State Warriors in the third seed. If that happens, we are all over the place to the point where I have been able to calculate this, Brian, because the tie-breaking procedure at that point is conference versus conference record for some of those teams, for like the Denver Nuggets and the Lakers and Clippers, et cetera, et cetera. Now, on the other hand, if the Lakers manage to hold on and win one more game, which is entirely possible, they'll just lock up the number 3 seed without much fanfare. Obviously, the Thunder are the guaranteed number 1 seed, and the Rockets are the guaranteed number 2 seed. So there is a possibility of a lot of movement for seeds 3 through 6, but if the Lakers get a win or the Warriors don't win 50, it's pretty much wrapped up where we're gonna have 1, 2, 3. But then 4, 5, 6, Nuggets, Clippers, Warriors. There's still some jostling that could be had there.
Yeah, and I think the Warriors have 4 more games, and they have to win all 4 of those to get to 50 wins. But yeah, to your point, they all have 32 losses right now. I haven't even put in the mental energy that you have to figuring this out yet because it's so complicated. And of course, the NBA knows what they're doing for scheduling. They knew that all these teams were going to be in contention, when they're making the schedule. And all these teams are playing each other the past week or so, and it's been exciting. The Warriors played the Lakers, Nuggets, and Rockets 3 games in a row. I think the Lakers and Nuggets played each other as well. The Clippers are the team that are on the rise lately. They are up at the fifth seed now. It's an exciting time. We've got about a week left in the season. I don't know what's going to happen. I think all these teams are really good. I don't think any of them have too many weaknesses.
Now, what makes the Clippers utterly fascinating, there are two things to me, if we're just kind of talking the playoff. The first is your boy, Kawhi Leonard, looks to be making a comeback, which is really good. We didn't know that. He has been injured since his Spurs days, has never been 100%, and earlier this season was quite bad. If we look at his box score geeks numbers as a power forward, so very Jimmy Butler like, and I want to stress this is as a power forward according to basketball references numbers. So basketball reference using a play-by-play lists Kawhi Leonard as a power forward. He is actually playing quite well. And because he is playing above average and he was terrible, he has been on an upswing. So if Kawhi can go into the playoffs healthy, that's something. James Harden, it does seem like Father Time has finally caught up with him in the sense that he is only a good, not great player. But Brian, the star I love is actually Ivica Zubac, right? Zubac, who the Lakers in the bad bus era that probably still makes Chris cry, just let him walk for nothing. And he is a player we have always loved. So the Clippers look pretty solid on paper. They do not, by, as we've kind of mentioned in past, look like a contender by traditional means. I think they could shock people depending on how good they go into the playoffs. One of the theories Arturo has had forever, Arturo Galletti, if you don't follow him, he is American numbers. I believe on most of the socials. I'm only on Blue Sky at the moment, and I think he is pretty active there. But one of the best basketball analysts out there, and one of his theories, I'll put in quotes forever, is that during the playoffs, they drop the stringency of the drug testing level. And as a result, veteran players that maybe were more beat up, that maybe weren't as healthy, look better. I could also buy a combination of more regular rest, more regular schedule, right? Like we kind of talked this last week, Brian, about young players not getting foul calls in the playoffs. And the insidious way to take that is the refs are out to get them. The less insidious way to take that is rookies in the playoffs are green and don't know how to compose themselves like veterans. And so you kind of learn that. I could see the other side too, where veterans look stronger in the playoffs. Maybe they are able to take performance enhancing something that they're not able to detect as well. It could also just be more rest and not traveling as much, more regular flight, more regular stuff. But the Clippers look a little scary. I wouldn't be scared of them as a contender compared to some of our top teams, compared to OKC, compared to Boston, compared to Cleveland. It's weird to say that, but they are looking just absolutely, on an uphill swing, the right time to get hot. Grizzlies and Nuggets, who are currently the 4 and 5 seed, they are the interesting ones where they have been good teams with good players, but have kind of struggled to the point of firing coaches. So who knows how they look going into the playoffs? But, they have a star. And then what I do love, Brian, for patting ourselves on the back is the Lakers and the Warriors. They went and acquired they went out and acquired star players at the trade deadline. And shocker, Brian, shocker, they have both improved a lot. And man, here is how wild the playoff picture is right now, Brian. Um, a 32 loss record at the moment puts you any place from the number 4 seed for the Denver Nuggets all the way down to a play-in spot, which currently the Clippers and Warriors would fight for the play-in spot right now if everything ended today.
Well, so the way I have it is the Timberwolves at seventh and the Grizzlies at eighth, and they are both in the plan with 32 losses, and then the Clippers and Warriors at 32 wins and as the fifth and sixth seeds. That's on from NBA.com, but I mean that's gonna change by the end of the night. And I think there's something to what you're saying. Well, so one thing is with the play-in games going now, teams that are not in that little mini tournament, they get a full week off. I'm pretty sure between the regular season and when the 7 game series start. So that's a big rest. And then the other side of it is with the veterans and that 7 game series, the veterans get to prepare, every night, and the coaches are watching video on the same team every day, and they're doing, if we want to muck it up and make it nerdy like we always do, if it's like a game theory kind of thing, the regular season game theory wise, is a single game. You just play one game against that team and you're done, right? A 7 game series is a repeated game. And in a repeated game, you can make adjustments. And yes, teams make adjustments at halftime or whatever, but the adjustments that teams make between games is much more substantial. And I think that that'll help the veteran teams a lot more. I was I was watching this Warriors game the other night, and I saw like a box and one in the game, and it's like that's a junk, college defense. But NBA coaches, will start throwing stuff in there if they if they get desperate. So yeah, 7 game series are exciting, and they can change a lot as they go on.
Well, and then knowing like it's funny because your point, the difference between the play-in and being a top 6 seed going into the playoffs. I actually remember when the Denver Nuggets went on their fantastic run, won a title, got to see that in person. That was amazing. Their first round matchup was the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I want to say Karl Anthony Towns was like, wow, the Nuggets just shellacked us in the first game. And he's kind of like, it's almost like they knew everything we were going to do. And I didn't, I made fun of him and I'm making fun of him now, but it's kind of funny because, you raise your hand. It's like, yeah, it's almost as if they had cameras on you, everything you were doing in the game. And this other team was able to just watch those for a long time and know it's like how how they get that film. And it's like, yeah, that's the exact point, is these teams that are going into the playoffs that don't have to do the play in, they get to sit and watch game film. Not only do they get to sit and watch game film, they get to sit and watch actual playoff games with those other teams, because that's the other thing. Kind of notoriously in historical NBA, coaches like um coaches like Popovich will go, hey, we're not going to play our playoff strategy during the regular season. Why would we give that ammo away? We're going to play this other team. We're not going to play them 100%, because if we play them 100%, they have game film of how we adjusted to their players, et cetera, et cetera. We don't want to give them ammo going to the playoffs. But in a play-in round, if you lose, you go home. It's a one and done. So you can't keep up any veneer. You can't do any fooling, and other teams get to watch you. So I am really excited. As I mentioned, yeah, basically, if the Lakers win tonight, it's 1 through 3 is set, and 4 through 8 is just who knows, still wild. And then out east right now, as we are watching, Brian, it looks like we may be going to overtime, which is what
Ooh.
everybody wants. The Boston Celtics and New York Knicks are fighting. The Boston Celtics are set. They have nothing to fight for. But the New York Knicks, if they win tonight, they can guarantee the number 3 seed, because, funny thing, they are in a potential tie scenario with the Pacers, in that the Pacers could overtake them in the standings. But if the Knicks win tonight, then they are guaranteed at worst a tie with the Pacers. And if that happens, then they have the tiebreaker. The tiebreaker goes, I just looked this up before the show, is head-to-head record, in division record if you're in the same division, or if you're not in the same division and one team wins their division, the winning division team wins, which is a shame for the Nuggets, right? The Nuggets are on this cluster of 32 win teams, 32 loss teams, Ryan. They're on this cluster of 32 lost teams, but they're not overtaking OKC for their division, whereas the Pacific Division with the Lakers, Clippers, and Warriors is wide open. So that could potentially happen. And after that, then it goes to conference versus conference, like who has the better record in conference. And so that could get all sorts of fun for the Nuggets, Clippers, Warriors, Grizzlies, Timberwolves, depending on how this all shakes up. I kind of just wish my Nuggets had won out, Brian, or won a couple more games. They had some close losses, stuff we will discuss, but
Yeah, so does Mike
Jokic,
Malone.
yeah, for sure. Because yeah, Jokic's double overtime 60-point triple double, that Westbrook gave away. Westbrook just absolutely killed us in that game. Both just box score wise, but then very end of the game wise. It was painful. And then a couple games later, I want to say against the Pacers, the Nuggets had another close loss. And again, similarly, you look at Westbrook's box score. Westbrook was a player that to start the season looked bad, and I was like, I don't know about this. Looked like he turned back father time middle season, was a productive player off the bench, and has been slipping lately. I don't know if that's age, if that's fighting in the locker room or whatever. But regardless, the Denver Nuggets have been, slipping lately, as we know. And I honestly don't know going into the playoffs who does what. All I know is what I've been saying for weeks now, which is out west, this is OKC's to lose. OKC is so much better than the rest of the West, even if you start taking into account like playoff rotations, rest, whatever. So, unless something really weird happens with the Thunder, an injury, some major weird upset or whatever, um, they're probably going to be the West. But it is nice that the first couple of rounds, including the play-in, can be fun. And then, yeah, out east, yeah, we're going to overtime, so we may not know by the end of this show, Brian. But out east, it does look like Cleveland and Boston are probably going to be fighting at the end. Who knows?
Ooh, yeah, there's a lot there. Yeah, the Knicks, I feel like I've been saying this all year, but even though they have 50 wins, I'm like, could they have been up there with, the Cavaliers and the Celtics for the top three teams, or top two rather? They are the third, obviously. I guess injuries are the main issue, right? They have Mitchell Robinson back now, and that's a really big deal. So they may be able to get something done in the playoffs. Yeah, out west, I had a point. Oh, the Thunder, man. So we were talking earlier about kind of holding stuff back for the playoffs and whatnot. That the top teams have an advantage there. The coach Diagono, who's probably gonna win Coach of the Year. We'll see, maybe not. He was saying basically, yeah, we don't do that. We just do our thing, and we're just gonna play our way. And we're so good that we're just gonna work on playing our way instead of holding stuff back. Like that's the kind of confidence you like to see, right? Their defense is just so good that they're just gonna shut everyone down.
Well, so as interesting as it is, and I'm not even sure necessarily if Greg Popovich just holds stuff back for the playoffs was even correct. If you actually look at his regular season record and playoff record, he does look interesting as not a playoff coach. And I am fascinated by this as a topic because this concept in the NBA or advanced analytics of my shit doesn't work in the playoffs. That's an infamous quote by Billy Bean, the main character in Moneyball. That's about baseball. But this general manager, it's like, I can use stats to win, but it doesn't work in the playoffs. And coaches we've like Budenholzer for the Milwaukee Bucks back in the day, and he's on Phoenix now, right? Friend of the show, as we keep bringing up Arturo Galletti, follow him as American Numbers on Blues. I'll endorse Blue Sky. I think he's still on Twitter, but I don't endorse Twitter. But that being said, his would just bash him in the playoffs. And another coach I love bashing is Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, one of the worst playoff coaches of all time. If you want to hitch your wagon to Doc Rivers, that's fine. But be aware that he has been involved in 3-1 upsets on the losing side in playoff history. That's something. Like once is bad luck, twice is coincidence, three times I was like, I'm out, Doc Rivers. There are coaches where we're like, maybe they're a good coach, but maybe they're not a playoff coach. And that's been an interesting concept to me. You have a much bigger background in the world of football than I do. And by much bigger, I mean like galaxy versus almost nothing for myself beyond being a Denver Broncos fan. And what I would say is in football, right, you have like an offensive coordinator and a head coach, and you can have a defensive coordinator, right? Like you have different, right? You basically have people that are responsible for different parts of the game, and that's kind of understood, even if you have a head coach. And in basketball, I'm not necessarily as sure as if I'd want an assistant coach, like being offense versus defense, but there is definitely something to the idea of do you want almost, for lack of a better word, a wartime general, right? Do you want a head coach that gets you through the regular season, and then do you want a different coach for the playoffs? Because this, we've used this metaphor a million times in the show. The regular season is a marathon. The playoffs is a sprint, and the strategies for how you beat those two different types of races are entirely different, right? Playoffs, you don't leave anything on the line. Regular season, hey, maybe I'm just going to give this game away, right? Maybe I will sit all of my starters and lose to Detroit, as embarrassing as that was a year or two ago, because it is more important for me to have, old Jimmy Butler healthy for the playoffs, old LeBron James healthy for the playoffs. That's a much different strategy in the playoffs where you're just like, I'm going to play Jimmy Butler 48 minutes because if I don't play Jimmy Butler 48 minutes and we lose this game, we go home. And that has just been a very, very interesting concept we've had about like what you should do versus what you shouldn't. Now, what I love about what you said about OKC is basketball in a nutshell. I'm going to steal something from Dave Barry, where Dave Barry said basketball is so different than other sports because in other sports, football, baseball, not sure on hockey. Hockey's a weird one, but in football and baseball, at least, the other team is constantly trying to find ways to stop you. And this weird knowledge game is important, right? In baseball, if I know what the pitcher is throwing, I have a huge edge. In football, if I know which play the opponent is doing, I have a huge edge. In basketball, think of like Stockton and Malone. You can know what the player is going to do and they're just going to beat you. And Dave Barry, he had like a great monologue on this at one point in the podcast. He was just like, every player in the NBA knows LeBron wants to shoot. So why don't they stop him? And his capper was, he's like, because they can't. And he brought up a playoff game where he said that at the time, this is hilarious, Paul George, right? So Paul George tries to guard LeBron James, and LeBron James just dunks over him. And it's just like Paul George knows LeBron what LeBron's going to do. LeBron knows what LeBron's going to do. In so many other sports, if you know that, it's game over, but it's not in basketball. So for OKC, when I was talking about like Greg Popovich leaving on the line, when you're a 5 SRS team and you're playing a 4.5 SRS team in the playoffs, you're like, I want to leave some in reserve to fool them, right? And OKC is like, we are a 12 SRS team. We are at least 3 points better than everybody in the league. We're gonna play our game. And that's the subtle difference. And to your point, I love it. And I do love what OKC is doing. Just build a good team, keep making it better. Don't stop, right? They're still stockpiling draft picks. I'm seeing hilarious takes. Gilbert Arenas is saying that they should trade Giannis to OKC so Giannis can get a title and OKC has all the assets. And I'm just like, it's ridiculous, man.
Yeah, Gilbert Arenas, much better as a hot take artist, I would say, than maybe an NBA player. Although, shout out to the Gilbert Arenas rule that got named after him when he went to the Washington Wizards. I mean, yeah, the one thing I'll say is, okay, I'll go with the jerk route, Dre. How about that? I'll do the jerk take.
I love it.
Um, I mean, we were talking about this a lot before the show. I was saying basically, I'm surprised that it's a solid rule that you should never fire a coach in the middle of the season or before the playoffs. Because if you have a good team with good players like Memphis and Denver does, and you're in a position to make some kind of a run, and the coach has already lost the team weeks, if not months before, like why would you wait until the end of the season, right? Why not make the change now if everyone knows that that's how it's going to go? And that it seems like that's what was happening, right? That the Nuggets were kind of ignoring the toxic atmosphere and just sweeping it under the rug. So why not make the change and give yourself a chance to make a run in the playoffs by, changing? And we talked about this before, right, with Dallas and the Lakers. Sometimes just being there every day, people think, well, you got to make a change. I'm here with these same people every day. The amount of hours they're putting in, Dre, grinding in practice, on film, they're flying on airplanes together, they're staying in hotels together. They're with each other more than, you're with your family. And familiarity can breed contempt. And it seems like these players were contemptuous of the coaches.
It is really weird. An easy comparable I can make for Booth and Malone kind of starting to read stuff up is actually like LeBron and Stephen A. Smith, where
Oh no.
I'm just kind of like, after reading up on the LeBron, Stephen A. Smith, it's fun stuff. We're out of the news cycle, Brian. We missed our window to talk about it on this show. But they had a fight basically where Stephen A. Smith was kind of insulting Bronny, LeBron James's kid. I would say not really. And then LeBron James was getting upset, and you get this nice fun back and forth. And it was very the take I heard on LeBron James, which I agree, is like the have your cake, eat it too. It's going, Bronny is in the NBA because of LeBron James. I have no complaints with that. I want that clear, by the way, on this show. Like, I have no complaints with nepotism in the NBA at the player level, at the coach level, at the GM level, because it's been there forever, right? The reason we are making fun of the Los Angeles Lakers for getting rid of Zubats is people that just got control of the Lakers because they were kids did that, right? Golden State Warriors are a well-run team, but there are sons of the owners in the front office.
Multiple sense.
One of the biggest things about getting into the NBA is having a parent that was a former athlete, if not a former NBA player, both for genetics, but then also for like having someone that knows everything you're going to need to do to get into the NBA, like the leg up that gives you ahead of time, not to mention if your father, such as LeBron James or say Doc Rivers, is like, I want you to play and they have a lot of clout. So I have no complaint. That's nothing new. But to have your cake and eat it too is LeBron James kind of going like, I wanted to play with my son in the NBA. That was a goal. Admirable goal. I'm for it. I think that's how he beat the scoring record, Kareem's scoring title. It's why he's probably still playing so well. Remarkable. Glad he had that incentive. But for then him to turn around and be like, it's not fair for you to, say my son is only in the NBA because of me. It's like, look, man, I
It's true
don't,
though.
it's like, I do not know what to tell you. You come out and say, I'm going to sign with the team that signs my kid and then the Lakers sign your kid and you sign with them. It's like, and I've got no complaints because, LeBron James, if he wanted to fire back, he could be like, hey, remember after I had the decision and I went to the Miami Heat and you all changed the rules to make sign and trades much harder so you can't get full bird rights if you do a sign and trade in the future? It's like, I can't get paid as much as I want. Like to come to the Lakers, LeBron James left money on the table, right? So it's going, if I can get paid as much as I want, I'm going to get other things. And if that's playing in a city I want to play with, playing with my son, absolutely no complaints. But the basic point is like, I didn't like either person. I would probably have sided in that specific argument a little more with Stephen A. Smith, but Stephen A. Smith is still a jerk and I hate his takes. So it's like both are wrong. So coming back to the Nuggets, Malone and Booth, reading up on both of them is weird, where Booth is to me a funny cautionary tale on us. I have said we're the cold. You said this phrase, and I've stolen it and used it all the time, Brian. The cold calculating economist, right? That's how we started. Dave Barry, an economist, came up with a formula to judge NBA players, and a bunch of stats nerds like you and me were like, "Fantastic! You've given me the formula to tell me if player A is better than player B." And after years and years of doing that, I've been like, these are people and their motivations are different. And something I always credit you with, Brian, is that something you always bring up is like, what's the motivation? It may not be to win a title. It may not be to win games. It may not be to be an NBA head coach. These people may all have very different goals, and you have to kind of be cognizant of that when you're evaluating them. And so, reading up on Calvin Booth about how he kind of just didn't really view players as people and how he talked about them is some of what's coming up. And then same note, Malone, I'm not as sure about his interaction with the player, but you're saying you've been reading up on some of that, but the players outside of out of Jokic didn't seem to like him. And then we wind up, like you were saying, where Booth and Malone seem to be fighting with each other. And actually now I'm starting to cry a little because apparently Booth was saying, was it Pickett was the player, if I recall, the youngun who's only played like 600 minutes?
Yeah, there's Pickett and one other guy that were caught up in this battle.
Well, it's rough because I think Strother has no business playing and has been making me sad for the Nuggets. It's understandable. He's young and he's only really been playing because Jamal Murray's injuries, etc. But like Pickett, I'll have to look up the name, but NNAGI, I believe is another name that came up. Both kind of coming under it. Pickett is okay as like a shooting guard, but I guess Booth wanted him played in front of Westbrook. And as I mentioned, Westbrook's been slowly deteriorating after a good middle season, and then it's cost us a couple of close games. So that's a tough one. But I think it sounds like they're both wrong. And you're actually selling me a little, Brian, because we say all the time on this show that the window for a playoff, like a playoff window of any sort, not just the title, just the playoffs, is so small that you should capitalize on it. And I was talking to a friend of the show, Ben Guest, actually yesterday, and bringing up that NBA teams don't realize that, hey, you may not be able to win a title, but you really want to maximize the number of playoff games you have because that's free money. You don't the players don't get paid very well. The players do not get paid very well for playoff games. That is a tough sentence. And Klay Thompson brought that up. Klay Thompson was bringing up how poorly paid they are and how much that helps your bottom line. Dave Barry's research, and this is outdated on ticket sales, was basically going, you make the playoffs, you get fans for life. You win a title, you get fans for a generation. So playoffs is really the goal of every NBA team. And so I'm in the old mindset when you and I were talking pre-show, where I was like, why would you fire your coach before the playoffs? Don't you want to steady the ship? And your hot take, Brian, which I'm curious if you have more on, is like, hey, if the coach isn't working well and is possibly going to cost the team in the playoffs. Should we do our best to at least up our chances to win in the playoffs now? Because if we don't, we got to wait a whole other season.
Yeah, and let's go back to wages of wins, right? One of the key theories is the coach matters a lot less in the NBA than the players do, and then the coaches get credit for. So, under that theory, maybe firing the coach in midseason is okay, right? It's really the players that are in charge of you know the team's philosophy and promulgating the team credo and motto. I don't know, whatever words you want to use there. It's the players more than the coaches, really. And if the players don't like that coach, if that coach is a problem, yeah, I mean, you know this. We say this all the time. We are past this idea of the militaristic older coach driving his boot down onto the younger players. Right? The players are too smart these days. They know how to win. They know that a coach's ego trip is not going to help them. I'm not saying this is true for Mike Malone, by the way. Apparently, Jokic really liked him, and he's the star, so that's the most important thing, right? That's probably why he stuck around. So we'll see. We'll see the details, right? It could come out that maybe just certain players didn't like him and they're being unreasonable. But in general, yeah, the players decide it. So what does the coach decide? Like you were saying earlier, the rotations matter a lot. So if there's some issue with the rotations, and we didn't do our research, I think, on Memphis and Denver on if they've changed or not, or if they're gonna change after the coaching change, that could be a significant difference. But otherwise, it's probably not going to make a big difference, right? They put in everything before the season. They've been running their same stuff all season, and they can make adjustments. But really, Dre, remember back to when we interviewed Coach Jenny Busek of the Seattle Storm, who's now an NBA coach, by the way, went on to do that after the Seattle Storm. And we talked to her about 3-point shooting, and this was years ago, and this has changed a lot since then. But she was basically like, yeah, I mean, our season is going down the train tracks right now, and we just don't have the horses and the time to put in this new game plan where we jack up a bunch of threes, right? And I guarantee you in the years since then, the Seattle Storm with different coaches are probably shooting a lot more threes. So, yeah, it's just, the ship is kind of already out of the port for these teams, I think.
Yeah, it's really, really rough. There's a bunch there. And I mean, what I would agree, like you said. So wages of wins, to be clear, on the coach doesn't matter, I would say, as much as you think. And the bigger point
Yeah.
there is if we look at the difference from coach to coach in the NBA, because a lot of these people came through the same coaching schools. A lot of these people know the same things, know the same drills, are going to tell players the same things. When Jimmy Butler went to the Warriors, when Luka Doncic went to the Lakers, we went, this is a top pro. They might not be 100% familiar with the team, but it's not going to take them too long to get in. Their entire life has been basketball, right? This is a person who is fluent in the language of basketball. They're going to be able to speak to other basketball players. They might have to learn a few dialectic changes, but they're going to learn quick. So the things the coaches, coach to coach, do don't seem to have as big of an impact as we would like to believe. Then, as you said, the rotations is a thing, let's say Arturo has brought up. Even that, as funny as it sounds, is not as complex as people want. And in fact, I think the harder thing for coaches is discipline. Um, this smacks very much of Moneyball, the Booth firing and the Malone firing. So in the movie and the book Moneyball, and this is a scene I keep meaning to write about but keep forgetting, there is a part where the team goes on a losing streak. Billy Beane gets upset and trades away a bunch of players. In the movie, that is portrayed as him saying, I'm making a move to make the team better because that's what I do. In the book, later Michael Lewis interviews Billy Beane and is talking about it. And Billy Beane's like, we were on a losing stretch. We were going to regress to the mean. The odds, the reality when we look at the types of players we got back and the types we traded is that move was basically a wash. So basically, Billy Beane was saying, hey, I did this move out of anger and it probably didn't matter. But, like the illusion of control. You want to believe you can do something when your team's doing nothing. And so, with that in mind, like if you're trying to look at the things that coaches can control, being disciplined and saying, I'm going to play these rotations. I'm going to play these players. And unless you give me a reason, I'm not going to stop doing that is huge. Other key point we brought up, I call it the he's Manu Ginobili point. This is from Greg Popovich. I keep talking him up a bunch, one of the greatest coaches in NBA history. There was a game where Manu Ginobili had a bad first half. Manu Ginobili is put in to start the second half. A reporter comes up to Popovich and is like, "How did you know you could put Manu Ginobili in the second half after he started that first half?" And he just like shrugs and angrily like that. Greg Popovich angers like, "He's Manu Ginobili," and walks off, right? So it's kind of going like that. For a coach, it's going, if I'm going to pull a player, if I'm going to change my rotations, there has to be a good reason that I can see. It can't just be I'm angry, I'm upset. That being said, with what you're saying about the Denver Nuggets, if there is stuff that was going wrong, and the biggest thing to me in this back and forth that I'm reading about that also seemed to come up in the book Moneyball was the sabotaging. Not so much in the book, but in the movie Moneyball, Billy Bean and I want to say Howe, I think was the was it Art Howe was I think the general manager or the manager in the game.
Yep.
So manager in baseball is like the coach, anyway, it's weird terms. So Billy Bean, the general manager, Art Howe, the manager, they were clashing, and Billy Bean's play my guys, and Art Howe's like, I know what I'm doing, and Billy Bean's like, don't steal bases, and Art Howe's like, don't tell me what to do. That isn't really real in reality. Art Howe like listened to Billy Bean and all this, but the movie wanted to play it up for drama. But that seemed to be happening with Booth and Malone. And like I'm saying, stuff like Booth saying, you need to play this player I acquired, and Malone saying, don't tell me what to do. I could see as an owner going like, you have literally cost me games with your squabbling. You two trying to stop, like to block each other and not working together is costing us games. And we can't have that. And we are, a couple games out of the play, like going into the playoffs. If we can hold on, if the Nuggets can hold on to 50 wins, they can grip onto a third seed. And it's going, hey, we're probably not beating OKC, but we have a chance to go to the second, maybe third round of the NBA playoffs. And if you two are fighting and that costs us a game or two in the playoffs, that's everything. So with how abrupt this was in both of them and what the reporting you and I have been kind of trying to piece stuff together with, and who knows, right? This could just be rumors coming out because it's fun. It does sound like ownership was going, you're there fighting with each other was a bigger problem than either or. And I am now really fascinated to see how the Nuggets are going to do in the playoffs.
Yeah, and apparently for a long time it was past fighting with each other. It was the problem was that they had no relationship and were not on speaking terms for months and months and months. You just can't, run a team like that. One, I said earlier, the axiom of never fire the coach, before the playoffs. Maybe we should question that. One axiom that they did break here that I will support is they went into the season with both of these guys as kind of lame ducks, and the conventional wisdom is whether it's your star player or your coach or GM, you should never go into the season without a contract, right? With them at the end of their deal. You should always settle it before the end of the last season so you don't get into a weird lame duck situation like you do here. And it seems like the Nuggets screwed that up because both the coach and the GM were lame ducks.
It's I still though the biggest thing to me that I just remain confused at though is them fighting with each other and like hurting the team and like that's just baffling to me, right? Like that to me makes no sense and makes me a little sad because you cost the team at each other and then nobody wins. Now we'll see what happens. I'm very curious to see where all of these people wind up. If in a season or two they both got jobs and everything's fine, we'll see. The Denver Nuggets, I'm like, here's the reality is there is no outcome in the playoffs that will shock me. And I really hope the front office doesn't freak out about anything. For me, when it comes down to the Denver Nuggets, the biggest thing they need to do, if we just look at their numbers for next season, is either improve Strother or stop playing him. Because everything else on their roster, for the most part, looks pretty good, right? If we look at the Denver Nuggets roster, top to bottom, you've got Jokic, you've got Brown. They're both young. Brown is on a nothing contract through 2026, through next season. And Jokic is signed, I believe, through 2028. So they're not going anywhere. They're both great. Admittedly, Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon have all been amazing. They're all close to average. They're all under 30, but they've all been dinged up. Westbrook is interesting, but the other players they've got, so like Westbrook, Peyton Watson, DeAndre Jordan, Jalen Pickett, they're not bad. Even I'm going to look up his name so I don't butcher it, Brian. It can't be that hard to say, right? Uh,
Well, you're looking that up. I think like the
it's
clear
just
thing for
Zeke,
the
right?
Nuggets is if
Najee.
they're gonna make a run. Oh yeah, Najee. If they're gonna make a run, Murray's got to come back and he's got to be close to like the good Murray and not the injured Murray, which is tough because he is injured, right? Yeah, that's the way they thread the needle, I think, because Westbrook, now that he's up at 2,000 minutes, is starting to scuffle a little bit. Maybe that's just bad luck, but it seems like he's making bad decisions almost, right? Like he's fatigued. So yeah,
It,
they need some injury luck, I think.
this is so painful to watch. So Murray is currently out, and I mean, at this point too, we don't know. He has been out like at least a week because he was injured. He stopped playing after their loss to Milwaukee, but he had put up some really good games against Houston, a win, a key win against a competitor that they needed to win, and then a heartbreaking loss to Chicago. He put up like 39 points, 38 points, good shooting both of those games. And then you're just like, oh, maybe you're back. And then the next game against Milwaukee looks kind of weak, and then he's out after that. So that's the problem is we're almost at the playoffs. We don't know if Murray's healthy isn't in game shape. The rest of the West is really just strong as is anyway. And we have two teams that are real, we have two teams in the Lakers and the Warriors that are real fakers. Now, the Lakers have kind of gotten to where they're supposed to be if they get that number 3 seed. But the Warriors, as an example, they are not a 48 win team, even if that's how they end the regular season. The addition of Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry getting a combination of more healthy and probably happy that he's playing next to Jimmy Butler, that team has been on a tear. That team is ridiculous. So the West, you have like 4 or 5 Tigers out there that can take anybody apart. So if the Denver Nuggets fall in the first round to a team like Golden State, to a team like the Lakers, to a team like Memphis, to a team like the Clippers, I'm not going to be shocked or even upset. And I just hope the front office isn't either. There is there is just a question of what they need to do going forward. And I don't have a good answer because I've made this kind of point about other teams before, which is, hey, if you've got good players, you're fine. And the Denver Nuggets have like 3 or 4 good players locked up for a couple of years that are all under 30. So I'm like, you're fine as long as you don't do something like ridiculous, as long as they don't lose their heads and, for instance, trade away Chris Brown for draft picks and a bad veteran or something.
Yeah, and there is part of this, and most of this is coming from the DNVR podcast, right? And you were talking about them a little earlier, but yeah, so this is just everything that they've heard being around the team all the time. And apparently, Michael Porter said something like, "Oh yeah, I saw this coming because they're gonna break up the team soon anyway if we don't win," or something like that. Like apparently, this part of this toxic atmosphere was the players just seeing that like yeah, the ownership is not really behind them on this, unfortunately.
Looking, by the way, at Memphis. So Memphis is the other team with the shocking trade. And the funniest thing to me about Memphis, because I don't think Memphis is in danger of how's Memphis looking? Let's look at Memphis because you said, Michael Porter Jr. says Nuggets are in danger of a breakup, and that is because they have some expensive players. That is because Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon are all on big deals. I think Michael Porter Jr. got one too, right? So you got 4
Yeah.
players on big deals and a young player that's setting to make a lot more, and the front office that doesn't want to spend money on a bench. Yeah, at some point they're like, yeah, we're going to trade away Jamal Murray or Michael Porter. Everybody on that team should be tradable except for Nikola Jokic. When it comes down to the Memphis Grizzlies, they're overpaying some players like Jaren Jackson Jr., but they're pretty good. When I'm looking over the Memphis Grizzlies, their biggest issue really is that they are giving lots and lots of minutes to Jalen Wells, who is not horrible, but he's not great. And
I
I've been
think he had
looking.
a really scary injury tonight, Dre, so he might be out for a while.
I hate when I say stuff like that because I
Yeah.
don't like winning on injury, but that's okay. Actually, coming into the playoffs, that makes things scary because the other thing that is shocking about the Grizzlies in a good bad way to me, which could explain their coach getting fired, is they are not playing their top players a lot of minutes. Their top two players are getting like 31, 32 minutes, and they have a lot of power on that team. So they could be scarier going into the playoffs. And I'm not sure, you know, the coach getting fired on a skid doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's also like, oh, wasn't playing to win, so maybe that cost him his job. And I don't know if you got a chance to look into Jenkins to see why he was fired because that one also doesn't make a lot of sense to me unless he's not liked.
Yeah, that's I didn't read into it further, but at the time that's just what they said, that he's pretty much lost the team and it wasn't something new that had been going for a while. I kind of personally looked down on him as a coach just because of the playoff series against the Warriors in 2022. Again, it's 7 games, so you get to see every little thing that happens. And when John Morant went down, he just handed the ball to Dylan Brooks and had Dylan Brooks go ISO, and I feel like it cost them the whole series. So to me, like Taylor Jenkins coaching is one of the biggest things that handed the Warriors that title. So I think Memphis fans are probably not too upset about it, but yeah, I haven't heard too many details.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny because that phrase lost the team. I do feel this it just gets very theatric where it's kind of known in NBA front
It's
offices
too
that after
generalized of a term, right? Because every situation is different.
and yeah, you can regain the team, you can get
Yep.
them back. I think the bigger thing is after the trade deadline, you're not allowed to do a lot, right? You can pick up players off waivers, but you're not getting any players off waivers that are anything big. You can't make major moves. It's too soon to go into the draft. You can't even really scout your opponents in the playoffs because you don't know what's going on. You can fire a coach. You can fire a head manager. Denver Nuggets, like I said, what is getting really fascinating to me is I would not be shocked if there was an escalation between those two that forced them to fire both. That's really what it sounds like, which is a
Some kind
real
of a
bummer.
shouting match or physical altercation or something like that.
So yeah, I mean, I'm horrible as a fan, Brian, but I really do hope, we get some more juice, we get some more
There we
gossip because
go.
I'm treating this as a reality TV because that's where we've hit at this point.
Let's
I'm
get Stephen A. Smith in here to talk about it, Trey.
Oh God, no. All right. And Brian, I mean, here's the good news. We have no idea what's going to happen in the playoffs. I'm just excited. I just hope for good basketball and I hope I'm still rooting for OKC because it's going. If you are the most statistically dominant basketball team of all time, I am going to be sad if you don't win. It's like I do want it. I do want them to win unless they're playing the Nuggets. So if the Nuggets could make the Western Conference Finals or the second round, depending on how they fall, Brian, against the Oklahoma City Thunder. In that case, then I'll root against them. But in all other cases, I will root for OKC. Even though, Brian, this is one last just hilarious point. I was having a discussion with a friend about this. The Thunder are one of the most bullshit teams in the NBA with one of the most bullshit owners in the NBA. He took a team out of Seattle, like one of the most hated moves of all time. And this guy, as we mentioned when I was talking about Presti, I think the owner, Clay Bennett, basically, kneecapped Sam Presti and wouldn't let him do moves, which is why he couldn't keep Russell Westbrook, which is why eventually Kevin Durant got upset. Not Westbrook, Harden. Couldn't keep James Harden, which is eventually why Kevin Durant got upset and left. And out of all of that, the person that gets the most scrutiny on the Thunder is going to be Durant. And that's because this is so unfair, Brian. Durant's just weird. That's the real answer. Durant is not media savvy. Durant does things like fight with people on burners. Durant says weird stuff. And it's just like this guy's like a basketball savant that has won MVPs, scoring titles, real titles, and finals MVPs. And somehow Clay Bennett, who stole a team from Seattle, who dismantled the dynasty in the making, is less hated than Durant. And that's just me. And I'm even rooting for OKC, which is BS, but do you want to at least remember that in front of that?
Hey, I can't wait to get a expansion team back in the Key Arena in Seattle or wherever it'll be.
Never
Think
happening.
you don't think
Never
so?
happening. I steal Dave Barry's conspiracy theory point, which I agree with, is as long as the key arena is open for an NBA team, NBA teams can shake down any local government and say, if you don't
Oh,
pay for a
right.
stadium, Seattle is
They're the
right there.
sacrificial lamb, Seattle. It's such
And
a
I mean
big
that,
media market, though. We'll see what happens.
but I mean they're also a saturated media market because they do
Mm.
have the Seahawks, they do have the Mariners, they got hockey, right? So that's the other thing
Seattle
is
Kraken. They
the
also have
Kraken.
Sounders FC, which is a massive MLS team. I think the biggest MLS team. They have a huge fan base.
They have the Storm, of course. So it's just
That's
like they're a
right.
pretty saturated sports media market. I mean, they could probably support a basketball team, but they are much more valuable to billionaire owners who want to get $500 million to $1 billion and like free tax money to build stadiums as opposed to getting a competing team in a good media market. So it's like, is what it is. All right,
The
Brian, this
conspiracy theories about Dallas Mavericks moving seem to be deteriorating as the weeks go on. Because again, Dallas is a massive, massive market, and they would be fools to move that team away.
we will see. I'm okay one way or the other. It could also be the flip side, right? If there's enough scrutiny on them, they'll say no, no, no. But again, Clay Bennett said that, and I'll wait. But I'll keep my Vegas bet that the
There we
Dallas
go.
Mavericks will go to Las Vegas at some point.
You can catch a Mavericks game maybe when you cash that bet in.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Brian, very last point, and this is just more of a shout out, but I finally caught it's the 2022 movie with Adam Sandler. It's called Hustle. The lead in it is Juancho Hernangomez. There are a lot of real NBA players, including Andrew Wiggins, I want to say, plays his rival in the movie as the number two draft pick. He's set up to be the projected number two player in the upcoming NBA draft who wants to go to number one. So that's why he's showing up at like the combine and stuff and fighting with our guy who is a player that the Adam Sandler is a
Looks like
scout for
it's
the.
Anthony Edwards, who's the other
Oh,
NBA
did I do
player.
Anthony? Did I confuse it? Is it Anthony Edwards, not Andrew? You're right. It is
Yeah,
Anthony Edwards. And wrong. And
yeah.
Brian, way too old. Andrew Wiggins is 1 billion years old. That would have made no sense in the movie. But
Ah,
yeah,
he is now,
you're
isn't he?
right. I'm confusing the number one pick by the Minnesota
Oh,
Timberwolves.
they're both number one picks. Yeah, good point.
But Anthony, you're right, Anthony Edwards. So it is Ant Edwards is fighting against Juancho Hernan Gomez in the movie. It was just a fun ride. And at one point in the movie, Adam Sandler as a scout is like, I don't like this draft pick. Did you see the efficiency numbers I sent on him? And I was just like, Adam Sandler, I absolutely love you. Was a really fun movie. Um, Aaron Gordon makes an appearance in the movie, so I'm just like an absolute fan, and I want to avoid spoilers, but there's like a point about the movie as an analytics fan that just has me tickled pink as to how things shake up. So, Hustle, Adam Sandler, it's on Netflix if you haven't checked it out. Check it out. If you're a Nuggets fan and you want to remember, Juancho and Gomez was a good Nugget. It looked like when I was reviewing his numbers, Brian, he was a very talented player, is no longer in the NBA. I don't know which overseas
Hmm.
league he has played in. Might be in Spain, has played in Greece.
He was good on the
Um,
Nuggets.
he was really good. It looks like just injury. His chart
Yeah.
100% just shows could not stay healthy, which is a real bummer, but not half bad of an actor. Fun movie if you're a Nuggets fan that needs something to cheer you up right now. Although, Brian, you've cheered me up a lot. At bare minimum, we get a fun, natural experiment, which we don't get often, which is to see how much does a new head coach matter going to the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, we even have two teams. We have ABC testing, or however you want to say it. This cast for Hustle is pretty amazing, Dre. I've got it up on the screen right now. Obviously, Queen Latifah, right? If you're from the 90s, you love Queen Latifah. And of course, she's been an actor for a long time now, too. Robert Duvall. But here's some of the other basketball people. Kenny Smith plays the agent. I haven't seen him act in a movie before, so I'm curious to see how that is. And Jaleel White plays Blake, who, of course, is Urkel. A friend of mine went to high school with Jaleel White and says he is a legitimate basketball player. So I wonder if he played basketball in this movie, Dre.
Yeah,
Do you
Ben
remember?
Foster. Yeah, I do. Jaleel White and Ben Foster, who you might remember, like he was on like Disney shows earlier when I was
Okay,
younger.
okay.
So it is funny when
Not a
you're bringing
relative
up.
of mine, but yeah.
Yeah. You didn't know. You know when you knew. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
he's
I
in a
was gonna say.
bunch of Marvel X-Men movies. Okay.
So I was gonna say, yeah, Ben Foster. So you didn't like know someone who went to high school with a Ben Foster, but you're right, same initials. But yeah, so essentially, if you're a fan of the '90s, because again, as you mentioned, Queen Latifah, you've got Urkel, you've got Ben Foster, just random people, tons of NBA players. Dr. J, one of my favorites, makes it, and Boban Marjanovic is in the movie and has some of the most hilarious scenes. If you haven't
Oh, I see. There's
watch it,
like dozens of NBA players. They just don't have speaking roles.
Boban has a speaking role and is I have I've loved his efficiency numbers. I've loved some of his commercials and fun stuff. I think there was a game where if he missed a free throw, the opposing team got like free chicken from some local thing or whatever. And he did it like he intentionally like missed points and the got the opposing fan base to cheer for him because he got him free chicken. So Boban's one of my favorite and does not disappoint. And then, by the way, like for the people who are fans of Adam Sandler, this is nothing new, right? Like in every one of his movies, if he's got a romantic interest, he just goes for some like big stars and being named. So like mad respect that he's just like, I'm gonna be an agent with a wife and I'm choosing Queen Latifah and I'm just like
Let's
mad
do it.
respect. Love Adam Sandler. He loves basketball. That's known. He's a
He
huge
does.
basketball fan, and that shows. That was the other part. Like watching this movie, I was just like, this movie was made by a fan of basketball, which is what made
Mm,
it all that more enjoyable.
can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, definitely watch it if you can. If your team gets bounced from the playoffs early, like my Nuggets may be slated to, good thing to watch.
Well, if
All
the
right,
Warriors
Brian.
end up in the playing game, Dre, they don't have a very good record in that play-in
That's
tournament.
true. That's true. Now, I think the Warriors are going to at least make the second round, and I think Warriors are going to end up against OKC in the conference finals or the Lakers, one of those two. And I'm rooting for any of those out. I'm rooting for OKC Lakers in the conference finals or OKC Golden State in the conference finals. It can't be my Nuggets. Of course, I'm rooting for my Nuggets, but I'm also being realistic.
Jamal Murray from out of nowhere.
If he does what he did back in the
Right now,
day,
he may not even be ready for the playoffs. We'll see.
yeah, yeah. All right, Brian, any other shout outs, anything to end on? We'll be back in 2 weeks when we'll be in the NBA playoffs at that point.
Yeah, we'll be done with that play-in tournament, and I love it. This is the best time of year. There's bad things going on in the world, but at least we have the NBA playoffs.
Yep. Well, I mean, there was some. I will say this, Brian. I forgot this. This was
Shout out to Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, the Supreme Court victory. I get to shout this out. Hopefully, this doesn't put too much of a target on me. We actually had a Susan Crawford like sign in our yard. Only people in our neighborhood that did. She crushed it. Just was, was an absolute blowout. Bet politics is so weird for me, Brian, right? Because I'm like 55-45. It's like it doesn't seem like that big of a margin, but politics,
It's
voting,
big.
absolute huge. It was very depressing against the 2024 election because if you look at the swing, you're just like, oh, this was such a bad campaign. It's hard to know the reasons because I think we did talk about like the Harris campaign, and you're like, she probably ran as good of a campaign as she could, but there were mistakes. It's very similar to when we're talking sports, right? Like this Booth Malone thing is a train wreck. I think your take is probably right, though, that you're like, this has probably been a train wreck for a while, and ripping the Band-Aid now isn't necessarily
Seems
as
like
big
they
of an
should have
issue.
resolved it last
Yes.
offseason.
It's like either resolve this in the offseason and go forward. Don't wait till now, even though it's blowing up in everybody's face now, it may not have happened now. And I think you've had that sound take before where it's like you can criticize something, you can criticize, someone's election, but you should point at the right areas because people do that all the time. This was the mistake they made. You go, no, that was they made mistakes, but the mistakes were back there. So you're right to say they were wrong. You were right to say they were wrong. You're wrong in where you're saying they were wrong, Brian. We're
Is
definitely
that
we've
that's a
devolved into
Beatles
nonsense.
lyric, I think.
That
Anyway.
sounds like I agree. It sounds like a Beatles lyric. Let's end on that, Brian.